Welcome to this episode of Implementing Best Practice in Business. We're here to help you and your organisation understand and implement global best practice to help you face the business challenges of today. Join me, Richard Pharro, CEO of APMG International, in talking to leaders and practitioners who have applied these frameworks and practices to boost their productivity. They're here, willing to share their knowledge and experience to help you learn from them so you can do the same to make you more competitive in today's market. Welcome, and my guest today is a very interesting person, Pez Kooner, who's the Global Head of IT, Civil Aerospace at Rolls Royce. Pez, that's a fascinating title and it must be a really challenging job. So how did you get there?
Firstly, thank you for having me on your podcast, Richard. Absolute pleasure to be here. As you say, it's an absolute privilege to be working for one of the biggest engineering companies in the world. I started my journey at Rolls Royce in 2018, start of 2018 as a business partner. So I joined from Birmingham City University at the time. And over the years, I've had some wonderful opportunities within Rolls Royce. Worked on a few transformation programs, some big delivery programs, and kind of eventually made my way through senior business partner. And then just over a year ago, I managed to secure the role of head of IT for Civil Aerospace. So just as context, so IT is split across it's very complex. It's a matrix organization. So we have a global IT, a corporate IT, and then we have a civil IT specific.
So how does an organisation like Rolls-Royce keep pace with technology? It must be such a challenging thing. I mean, you're full of talented designers, talented engineers, you're doing cutting edge research. I can't believe it all just runs on standard IT as I would recognise it. So how do you keep ahead of the field?
So I think it's a mixture, it's a blend, Richard. So I think first of all we're blessed with having some of the best minds in the world working at Rolls-Royce, and particularly from a technology point of view, we have wonderful tacit knowledge within the organisation, but also we have great partners too who are really kind of embedded in our business, help us understand what the art of the possible is, and kind of help us take that journey on when we have a problem to solve. We rely quite a lot on our partners and our tacit knowledge to move things forward. But I think the other, from my perspective as a team leader within IT, it's also the benefit of having an intelligent customer. And I know that's a double-edged sword sometimes, but as technology becomes more of a commodity than a luxury, we can rely on the customers that we serve or the business partnering that we have within the organization, where we can have frank conversations with people who will come to us with solutions sometimes that we're not aware of, purely based on their own expertise and the knowledge and the research that they do within their field. So I think it's very much a collaborative effort to stay ahead of the game.
It's interesting you say that about your partners, because in your introduction you spoke about you being a business partner. Now, I don't know if everyone listening to this podcast will know what a business partner is. So I know you're passionate about how do you sort of get the best out of people, how do you build relationships. What is a business partner, and what are the skills of a business partner?
So I think in terms of kind of definition, I think some people will look at business partners or refer to business partners as business relationship managers. And in essence, for me, it's people who can get things done. If I was to dumb it down into one sentence, it's exactly that. People who understand the business that they're working in, have a good grasp of technology, but more importantly, have the relationship skills to bring people together, to solve problems and achieve outcomes. So, not necessarily technical as a role, but it does require having the skill set of understanding people, understanding management principles, the ability to solve problems and think outside the box. So it's quite a unique blend of skill sets. So yeah, it's definitely one of those roles that falls outside of the conventional IT route, if you like. But it's becoming more and more prevalent in large organisations in particular.
And in your experience, both within Rolls-Royce and in other organisations, is there a particular base qualification that sets you up well to be a business relationship manager, or is it one of these things where, if you haven't been polluted by a traditional approach, and if you haven't already set in your ways, then you're going to be an even better business relationship manager rather than someone that's already been trained to do things a particular way?
For sure, yeah. So I think in terms of a profession, I think it's been around for many years. But I think in the past about 7 to 10 years, I think in particular, it's got a more of a structure behind it now. I don't think that you're necessarily born a relationship manager. I don't really believe that. I think it's a skill set that you can acquire. There are obviously elements that you would be beneficial for you to have an inherent skill set. But I think it's the great thing about the role is that you can come from any walk of life, whether that's from within IT. Project managers or business analysts are often primed to become relationship managers, but also people outside as well. I mean, relationship management is so great that you've got finance business partners, HR business partners, and it is all fairly transferable. I mean, in terms of your question around formal qualification, I think right now the Business Relationship Management Institute offers quite a good pathway into formal qualification. I mean, as I said, I worked in academia for a number of years, and even within the IT programs, relationship management isn't a module which is quite popular right now or quite common right now. So therefore, I think if you were looking for an opportunity to understand a bit more, the Business Relationship Management Institute offer a pathway, and it's one that's increasingly recognised not just within the UK but
So
globally too.
do you have a career track within Rolls Royce? Is it something that the organisation has bought into? Is it something you're trying to build and
Yeah.
encourage other colleagues at a similar level to yourself to embrace this and see it as a career path? Because I believe Rolls Royce have quite a lot of apprenticeships, don't they? So you've always been an organisation
Correct.
that is steeped in development of the individual, development of the person, development of the profession. So is business relationship management now a professional stream within Rolls Royce, or do you think it's coming in the future?
Yeah, it's obviously with an organisation so complex and varied as Rolls Royce. You're always going to have a variety of different careers and different pathways that you can follow. In terms of a digital and IT organisation, we're fully committed to business relationship management or business partnering as a career path. We have a requisite where we encourage all of our business partners to go through at least BRMP, which is the basic qualification, just so that we can all talk the same language and we have a common framework. I mean, Rolls Royce as an organisation, we have a lot of people moving, from one end of the engineering spectrum. They can end up in IT, they can end up in marketing. So there's always opportunity for graduates to move around. And one of the things that we therefore do is make sure that we have a way to, as long as people have got the core skill sets, we put them on courses and development to make sure that we're talking the right language and reinvesting in our staff too. So yeah, for sure. It's definitely a career a pathway that we promote.
Pez, you obviously convinced your board to invest in business relationship management and business relationship managers. Now, okay, you may be pushing an open door because of the history of actually developing people, as you just explained. But what would you suggest to somebody else who had to convince their board of directors that it is worthwhile investing in the development of business relationship management as a skill, as a profession within the business, and indeed the individuals in that role?
Yeah, so I think broadly speaking, for development on this general, I think if you have to convince a board or your seniors or your management of investing in people, I think you're probably working for the wrong people anyway, right? If you don't recognise the development of your people as something that not only enriches your employees but also enriches your organisation, you're clearly barking up the wrong tree. So I think there's that side to it. I think in terms of relationship management in particular, I think more of the C-suite executives now begin to recognize the importance of having people who understand the business, and I'm going to drop short of calling them MBA-esque people, but people who have a good understanding of what the business is about, what the opportunities are, and thinking about problems, business problems, rather than you're focused on one role or in a specific silo within the organization. So I think as a term, I think it's become a lot more easy to convince people around the business relationship management capability. I think as new CIOs come in organizations and CIOs go around, I think certainly compared to 15 years ago, more and more CIOs are adopting business relationship management practice within their structures and within their operating model. So I think it's one of those progressive things anyway. And to be honest, I think it's one of those things that you only really see the benefit of when you actually implement the activity. So if someone was looking at professional development, I think what I would encourage first is, if you're starting a new implementation, implement something, get people through the door, start doing business relationship management in your organization formally. And if you're doing as half as good a job as I'm sure people would, then the qualification and the buy-in for formal accreditation will definitely follow, because the impact that it can have with a good implementation far outstrips the cost of investing in formal qualification and development.
No, it's often been said that, hasn't it? The investment in people and training always pays back if you go about it in a considered and a professional way. But
Yes.
you have a lot of suppliers. You must have a huge global supply chain. So do you encourage your suppliers to also look at this concept of the business relationship manager? And do your guys work with suppliers through the whole of the supply chain, or are your business relationship managers internally focused?
No, so we are internally focused. So we don't have the kind of exposure to the supply chain externally, if you like. Obviously, we do interact with our own IT supply chain. Obviously we work with partners, as I mentioned. So our business partners will invariably get in discussions with our ecosystem partners around delivery and problems, and kind of engaging at that sense. And I guess the closest answer I would have for you, Richard, is um, the business partners do get quite a lot of exposure to these teams, and I think as our capabilities matured, our ecosystem partners now understand the value of the business partner too, and obviously I'd like to think that they're taking some of those principles back into their organisations as well. But certainly in our organisation, the business partners are seen as key, particularly when we have obstacles and we need to get things done to help remove blockers. So yeah, it's definitely one that's not explicit, but I think there's a lot of exposure there for business partners into our ecosystem.
That's very interesting. I was talking to a colleague the other day in Germany, and he said that one of the big German car manufacturers, their head of IT or someone quite senior in IT said, if he ever hears the comment that the business doesn't understand IT or IT doesn't understand the business, he considers that person to be somewhat rooted in an old age philosophy that IT is now
Mm.
so widespread through the business that it's really about this inclusive management of the business needs IT and IT is the business. So how do you see that evolving with the relationship management role, which was started as the linchpin between what the IT guys could deliver, what the business wanted, to sort of smooth that through? So do you see it changing in any particular way?
I do. It's an interesting concept. I think the division between business and IT, although it does exist still, I think it's the lines are getting more and more blurred, and rightfully so. Right? You don't have an IT department for the sake of having an IT department in any organization. It's there to help the business achieve its goals. Right? Same as HR, same as a general counsel function. So I think from that point of view, I think IT's probably taken um, a bit longer than other functions to be fully integrated into the business. But as you said, and as your friend or colleague mentioned as well, that it just sounds so outdated now to have that divide of it's IT and the business, and if the business don't understand IT or vice versa, it doesn't work. Comes back to the point of the intelligent customer. I think people now just are so comfortable with technology. It's now about solving the problem. It's not about solutions almost. And I think that's the maturity journey for a business relationship manager. I think when you walk into a fairly immature environment around a siloed organization, your first role will always be trying to build that gap and bridge that gap and be the linchpin, as you put it, to do the connection. But I think as you mature as a relationship management function or a business partner, what you'll end up with is, having that seat at the top table when you're actually starting to think about strategy, and where do you take the business forward. So the kind of integration between business and IT is almost, secondary. It's you wouldn't think about it twice. And what you're then looking to do is, well, how do you actually move your organization forward? Now you've got the basics in place with a clear strategy and a focus to move the business in the right direction. So I agree. It's definitely a journey that you have to go through. But yeah, it's definitely one of those where the lines are blurring. And the only other thing I'll say about that is you're only ever as strong as your delivery capability. So no matter how mature you are or you think you are as an organization, if we can't provide the basic IT needs, whether that's through customer service or through project delivery, IT will always fall down the pecking order very quickly if those aren't in place. So having that robust delivery, and robust service management is the way to make sure that embedded way of working stays valid and strong as possible.
So how does the relationship between the BRM and say the project manager work? Because I thought the project managers would be responsible for an execution and delivery function, and you're saying the BRM is also responsible for an execution and delivery function. So do you see the two roles very, very similar? Do you see them as a team to execute and deliver?
It's definitely a team to execute and deliver. With the best will in the world, a business relationship manager would definitely not be able to manage every single project that comes through the door. So there's a bit around there about accountability and responsibility, and for me, the business partners play a role in making sure that they keep the tension with the delivery teams, and they're representing the interests of the business, and making sure the project manager delivering to what's required, if you like. Certainly not there to do the project management's job. I think that's a specialist skill set in itself. But having someone there who understands the requirement from the perspective of the stakeholder, and kind of driving to make sure that everything's on track. But then also, making sure that you've got someone there who can help, provide that gel, or that the ability to break through barriers, which I know project managers often get on complex programs and trivial programs too. But it's having the business relationship managers there to help overcome stakeholder challenges sometimes, or if requirements aren't quite right. So I think there's definitely a collaboration in both roles there, Richard. It's not it's not one or the other.
Pez, that's quite fascinating. The relationship between the business relationship manager and the project manager. It sounds as though the business relationship manager is taking a role on behalf of or alongside the project sponsor as somebody that would help the project manager overcome some of those sponsor type questions and get engaged at that level. Now, from a project manager's viewpoint, that actually sounds quite an interesting and quite a useful role, that there is someone fully engaged who can help resolve those issues. Is that a fair representation of what they could do?
Yeah, it is. It's definitely a role that the business partners can fulfill, particularly in our organisation. When we have investments in play, the role of the business partner is very much an assurance role in that, and representing the interests of the sponsor, or the stakeholder, as you put it. I think you touched on around the bit about sometimes stakeholders lose interest. I think it's an interesting observation. I think that's where the business partners, the more mature business partners, also hold the tension back with the stakeholders too, and making sure that actually we are still delivering, or we're still doing the right thing for the organisation, and it's not just a pet project. So we do encounter that. I think the other bit to it, Richard, is that delivery or assurance of delivery is just one part of a business partner's role. When you think of we have something internally called six services that we promote, and that's what we do as a body of work as a business partner. So things like making sure that we control the investments for the areas that we support. We understand the architectural principles or the strategy of where we're going as an organisation. We look at service management. We look at demand management, which then leads on to project management or project assurance, obviously. So there's various elements of a business partner's role which make it quite rounded. So although it is a kind of a representation or representative for a stakeholder to deliver projects, the role is a lot broader than that.
And do you see a time when a business relationship manager is the key route to becoming the CEO?
Yes, I think increasingly so. I think I've been engaged in a variety of different conversations recently about pathways for business relationship managers after they've done it. And CIO is definitely a way forward. I think the great thing is that for CIOs now, I think you touched on the point earlier about technology, but CIOs are now becoming more focused on leading the business rather than leading technology. I think there's always more capable people than you to look at the technology side of things. So it's really important for the modern CIO to understand what the business is about, where the business is heading, and having more of the softer skill sets around building relationships and understanding and dealing with the grey. And I think that puts business partners as prime candidates as someone who could potentially do that role successfully. And I think we're seeing that now. I think I've seen a lot of modern CIOs now. Probably spoke to about 3 or 4 in the past year who have had business relationship management roles and now CIOs or CDIOs of fairly large organisations. So yeah, I think it's definitely a good
And that probably fits with the current trend that, with people outsourcing more IT, people using the cloud more, it's all about procurement and relationship with that supplier rather than necessarily what the technology is. So I'd imagine that with that procurement probably gaining pace, I'm sure there's some on-premise stuff that Rolls-Royce have that they wouldn't trust with anyone other than Rolls-Royce. But for the large bulk of what most organisations do in terms of IT, it's probably more procurement and relationship than it is around technology and solution.
I think it's probably too broad of a statement to make, if I'm being honest, Richard. I think it just depends on your organisation. The age and the legacy of your organisation and how complex it is plays a big part. I mean, it's not. I think for startup organisations or fairly agile organisations, it is quite easy to do things like move everything to the cloud and then focus on procurement and relationship managers. For other more traditional organisations, it's difficult, and from a process point of view, but also from a regulatory point of view too. Industries like ours are heavily regulated, so we have to be very, very careful in terms of what technology choices that we make from an architectural perspective. So I think yes, there is a lot more cloud and a lot more opportunity to move into more software as a service or type arrangements. But I think there will always be a place for retaining that tacit knowledge and internal capability. I mean, I've been fortunate enough to work for organisations where it's fully in-house and organisations where it's kind of fully managed almost. And to be honest, the perfect answer's probably in between the two. And I think you'll find that it's quite a cyclical thing within IT. Every 10 years, you have the whole thing to move to the cloud or move outsourced, and then everything goes in internal. So I think it's just a journey that IT goes through. But yeah, I don't think it's as black and white, unfortunately, as cloud is the future and all you do is contracts management and relationship management. But I think being smart with your ecosystem is critically important. What bits of your department can you get somebody else to do more efficiently, more productively than you can and your organization can, but then also having the nous to hold on to your talent internally as well, to make sure if you do move supplier, well, you've not lost the crown jewels, if you like, of your IT estate. So So yeah, it's probably a balance between the two.
It sounds like most senior management challenges, it's about judgment and it's about choosing the right solution, which brings me on to my final question for you. If you look back over the lessons you learned in your career, what three things would you have liked to know that you now know when you were first starting off?
Oh, question. I'll probably answer it more from a philosophical point of view, Richard, if I may.
Philosophy is good, Pez.
Good,
Philosophy is good.
good. We're talking my language then. I think the first thing I'd probably say is that there's, realizing that there's always an opportunity in life and in your career. You just have to spot it. I think especially for graduates coming through or people going early into their careers, sometimes it does feel like, you're very single track minded. You're looking for a specific outcome, whereas actually broadening your understanding and being open to learn different things and making slight adjustments in your own expectations can carry you forward, which will eventually put you probably back in the path that you wanted to anyway. So not to be overly prescriptive and looking out for those opportunities, and whether that's through training or development or doing something a bit different. I think having that open mind is really, really important. So I think that would be one piece of advice I'd give to myself. The other thing I'd probably say from earlier on in my career would be to under promise and over deliver.
Hmm.
I think that's really, really important. I think as you're in your effervescent youth, you can fall in the trap of trying to do everything and trying to be a shining star and take on more than perhaps you can deliver. So I think always setting expectations, and specifically for business relationship management and business partners, is really important that when you do have these kind of roles of responsibility, that you manage expectations accordingly. And it's a great way to learn. Actually, it's a great way if you want to learn and get a bit of experience under your belt. I can assure you that's a very good way to earn some battle scars. But it's definitely something to be mindful of. And I guess the final one probably would be don't lose sight of what's important in life. And what I mean by that is having a balance. I think if you're constantly chasing progression in your career or money in your career, it's never enough. 9 times out of 10, your appetite for the next big role or an additional pay packet, it'll cancel itself out with your expectations of life and your consumption of a variety of things. So having the insight to invest as much time as you can with your family and friends and your mental well-being is equally important. And I think if you can balance your investment across your career and those elements, I think you'll find that you'll lead a very fulfilling life. And then when things aren't going too well in your career, you'll have the bank of investment to rely on with your friends and family around you and your mental health and mental well-being. So I guess it's all about having everything in moderation, and work's work. It's one of those things that will come and go, and hopefully, you'll have a very good career out of it. But making sure that you don't lose sight of the other important things in your life too, would probably be my advice.
Pez, that's fascinating advice. That I could sense the real sort of integrity and personal commitment to that. For someone that's actually got to become global head of IT at Rolls Royce, it does show that you can blend your personal wishes and your personal life with a really, really strong career in whatever organization you want to go into. Many thanks for sharing that insight with us, and many thanks for finding the time to speak to me today.
Always a pleasure. Thank you very much, Richard.
Pez.
Thank you.
Thank you for listening. We're always keen to hear your feedback and suggestions for future episodes. You can find all the information in the show notes below. Please visit apmg-international.com to find out more about our accredited training and the certifications that support them that are related to the topics discussed in this series. I hope you've enjoyed today, and I look forward to you joining future episodes while we continue our exploration into best practice and the benefits it brings to global business. Thank you.